it's me again, bringing more bad content to the internet. If you saw the last video on tier lists, then you know what this one is about already. I make terrible tier lists that relate to Payday 2, a game that I play. Let's just get right into it, since I'm sure you don't want to hear me just talking. Wait, isn't this whole video just talking? Let's start with a pretty tame list. A list of perk decks ranked by how often those pubs join my games. Maybe one day I'll make a spreadsheet to make a completely accurate list based on data, but for now I'll just wing it. Crew Chief used to be a deck reserved for level 24 Wolf, who didn't know he even had it equipped. But this deck has been gaining more attention for about a year now. I wouldn't say it's a very common deck to see, but I'd say you can at least find 3 or 4 Crew Chiefs in a day's worth of pubs. After the recent buff to Muscle, it's a very solid deck. That doesn't mean you'll see it often though. I come across maybe one of these guys every day, and they tend to be newer players. Armor is such a good deck, which is why it's a shame it isn't played more often than it is. If there is an armor on your team, you will feel those extended fades, and your life will be so much better. Playing pubs would be so easy if every lobby had an armor, but I only ever come across these rarely. Ah yes, the epic Rouge perk deck, beloved by all. One of the lowest skill floors in the game, along with one of the lowest skill ceilings in a game, make this a deck that screams to pub players. One of these bad boys, emphasis on bad as pub rogue players never tend to be useful in any way, is in basically every other lobby I join. Hitman is a perk deck in this game. Did you remember that? No? Well, it seems pubs don't remember that either. It's not the easiest perk deck to use, only offering some armor regen speed and akimbo buffs, so it makes sense why I only find these guys once in a blue moon. For some reason, whenever I see a Crook player, there's like a 40% chance that they aren't using a valid armor choice. Why CTV Crook is such a common choice among pub players is still a mystery to me, but it's not like you see this perk deck constantly anyway. When it comes to Loud, Burglar is just worse rogue. Aside from me, I guess, no one ever plays Loud Burglar in my pubs. Oh, except those that join thinking it's stealth, despite me marking the lobby Loud. And if you go by that logic, then Burglar is one of the most common decks in my lobbies. Infiltrator. Damage resistance and healing? More like melee-only perk deck. Good luck finding an Infiltrator in a public game. I certainly never see them. Sociopath. Damage resistance, healing, and armor gating? More like melee-only perk deck. Wait, that's the same description. Socio is more common than Infiltrator, but the majority of people I see using it are completely clueless, even more so than the Infiltrator users, and only use it because funny spoon bonk, when the spoon doesn't even swing fast enough to make use of the Sociopath damage boost. Gambler. No, I don't think I've ever seen this used by a pub. Maybe once or twice, but they aren't very memorable. Grinder is like Gambler, but easier. I see people using this on occasion, but they never really do it well. This is definitely just a thing in my pubs, because I doubt anyone else gets as many Yakuza players as I do. They're always under level 70, have the CTV on, and never a fully leveled Yakuza deck. I have no idea why I get so many. Ex-President players are a dime a dozen, but they're still out there. Unlike most pubs, I find that people using Ex-President have some semblance of human intelligence as well, so that's a plus. Maniac players are nowhere to be seen in my public games, but that kinda makes sense. Reading the perk deck description is like trying to read university physics with modern physics. A turbine fan in a jet engine has a moment of inertia of 2.5 kilogram meters squared about its axis of rotation. As the turbine starts up, its angular velocity is given by the angular velocity z is equal to 40 radians per second cubed times squared. Okay. Find the fan's angular momentum as a function of time and find its value at time equals 3 seconds. Find the net torque on the fan as a function of time, and find its value at time equals 3 seconds. The fuck? Well, that's assuming people actually read those descriptions. These fuckers are like cockroaches. They're in every nook and cranny of this game's public scene. However, unlike cockroaches, these players usually die from everything. Most of the time, it's because they have no idea what they're doing, and just expect the epic meta deck Anarchist to keep them alive. Anarchist has a low barrier of entry, which leads to overconfidence for new players, and free custodies. Cool deck, useless players. I rarely ever see bikers though, so it's not a big deal. Even though Kingpin has been taken off the market, I still see people playing it frequently. Great deck, lots of fun, and usually capable players. Sicario is like Kingpin by way of pushing objectives. It's also similar since almost everyone I see using it has full control of their brain functions. This deck used to be rare, but it's become more common in the past couple months. It's the best deck in the game, so of course it gets a lot of playtime. Stoic players are like Anarchist players with less custodies. I should really start an H3 pack Sanctuary. Maybe it's just that people are afraid to use this deck in pubs because it will out them for having the H3 pack, but I am here for you. Wear that badge proudly. And also use this deck. It's super cool despite being used by no one. Hacker players are rogue players that live for marginally more time. I give them credit for trying to improve, but you can't play Hacker with a rogue mindset and expect to succeed, as I find most players trying to use this deck do. Well, there's the list of those perk decks. Remember that this is just based off of players that join my public games, so don't complain to me that I put Tag Team at the bottom, despite your lobby somehow attracting Tag Team players and only Tag Team players. Berserker is a pretty commonly used skill, mainly by those cockroaches I mentioned earlier. It gives more damage to the player when they have lower health. There's tons of ways to lower your health, but some are better than others. Let's start with something pretty straightforward. Fucking dying. There are two types of downs. Those that send you to bleed out, and those that instantly incapacitate you. The ones that send you to bleed out are the common ones. Getting shot, falling, stupid teammates, you know what I'm talking about. The incapacitated state is not as easy to achieve. The first is just being cloaked. I'd bet everyone has been cloaked at one point or another. The second is being tased long enough. This one happens pretty rarely, to be honest. There are tons of ways to break out of a taser stun, but that's beside the point. On death sentence, you revive with 10% of your health intact, which translates to 80% Berserker. The upsides are that this is a fairly easy Zerk to achieve with a decently high value. It also applies to every deck. That would be pretty good, if it wasn't for the downsides. First off, going down will cost you a doctor bag down the line. Consider a botless solo. You can't really go down there for Zerk, can you? Unless you're playing a rev game. Going down isn't an option for solos. For those downsides, going down just isn't practical as a Zerk method. Similar to just dying is living in Swansong. When you're in Swansong, you have 0 health, and so you have 100% Zerk. But really, don't do this. You only have 6 seconds plus whatever time you're downed. Seriously, don't do this. You could die, but you could also be murdered. Well, I guess being murdered leads to dying anyway. I don't recommend asking your teammates to blow you up for Zerk, as they usually 1. Don't stop when you have enough, 2. Stop before you have enough, or 3. Just ignore you. But if you are playing with friends that can communicate, give this a go. One step above going down is just being shot. Your Berserker comes out of getting shot depends on what enemy shot you, but if you have knowledge of what damage enemies do and how much health you have when, it's pretty easy to get a decent Berserker out of just being shot. This also applies to every deck, but you might be thinking it doesn't work due to Anarchist's low health pool. Well, with a Convert and Frenzy aced, you can actually take a light shot on Anarchist, which gets you a pretty high Zerk. That method is pretty expensive though, so I would recommend getting shot on any deck that isn't Anarchist. Speaking of Frenzy, Frenzy itself is a Zerk method. Frenzy gives a flat 40% Berserker, but it does come with a cool little damage reduction. The reduction can help in some setups with defense, so it's nice to have. So why is Frenzy impractical? Well, 40% Berserker isn't very much. This means that a lot of breakpoints just won't be hit. On top of that, Frenzy, costs points. If your build is short on points, this isn't really an option. All in all, just taking Frenzy is impractical, unless you have a way of getting it down lower, like, say, a Molotov. Molotovs are super common for getting Berserker, and it's easy to see why. They're consistent, not affected by ping, have no skill point cost, and can easily get you a really high Berserker. However, Molotovs aren't flawless. They take up your throwable, which can be a hefty price. Concussions are extremely powerful, so to replace them with something that can't be used offensively is a risk. On top of that, you only have 3 of these, unless you have fully loaded ace, or a grenade case, or the stockpiler boost, or a teammate with Molotovs. Okay, but my point is you don't have 1,000 of these at your disposal. Rezerking could be an issue if you just run out. Another thing to note is that Molotovs don't work on every deck perfectly. I'm mainly pointing to Armorer, which will require 2 Molotovs to account for the 2-second God mode. Even after using 2 Molotovs for armor, you're barely scratching the top level of Zerk. That is a pretty specific case though, so I'll leave that there. A really minor thing is that Molotovs are also the only way to lower your health and stealth. Well, aside from dying, but don't do that. The other explosive throwables can Zerk you as well, but also, why? Don't use them. They're just so weak and require such specific setups. I really don't have much to say. Just don't. So we talked about throwables, but what about your deployable? Well, C4 can do the job. Sort of. While going into a pub with Molotovs is acceptable, rolling in with some C4 can be looked down upon. Doctor bags, first aids, and ammo is far more useful than C4, and that's assuming you level up your C4. I've been kicked for joining lobbies with 3 C4 on multiple occasions, and I'm sure you'll run into that as well. But if you know what you're doing and don't need the deployables I mentioned earlier, then C4 works. Both the fire trap and none can work for getting a Zerk, the former of which can be really point heavy, and the latter of which struggles to find a use outside of Zerking. Sure, on some maps you can open like a single door or something, but you'd be better off with a secondary or primary saw in your weapon slot. Speaking of weapon slots, how about grenade launchers? Grenade launchers work great for Zerking. You can either just wing it, or have a pretty specific setup for a pretty specific Zerk. Grenade launchers, depending on your choice of course, can Zerk every single deck effortlessly. Add to that, they can kill enemies, and pretty well at that. Grenade launchers also refill ammo when picking up boxes left by cops, and take no skill point investment. Zerking with grenade launchers is super handy and hard to pass by. Rocket launchers are like grenade launchers, but instead of launching grenades, they launch rockets. That was stupid. Anyway, the reason these are impractical rather than good, like the grenade launchers, is that they don't pick up ammo. They also don't conceal for shit, so you aren't getting these in every build. Rocket launchers also do pretty absurd amounts of damage, so angling is required if you don't want to murder yourself every time. HE shotguns can get you a fairly high berserker as well, and you have extreme control over how much you get. The fairly low damage combined with high ammo allows you to chip away slowly until you get your desired berserker. One issue is that it won't work all too well on armored setups, as the low damage is a downside at that point. However, these shotguns can kill cops and pick up ammo, so why did I put them in limited? Unless you're going to invest in shotgun CQB or shotgun skills in general, HE shotguns can be a major pain in the neck to Zerk with. Snipers aren't in the getting shot category because they're a tad different. Sure, you are still just getting shot, but the mechanics snipers follow are different to those followed by other units. There's a lot of specific ways to take advantage of snipers to get Zerk, but they aren't applicable everywhere. Not every map has snipers, and not every map has snipers that you can safely let shoot you without worrying of dying to something else. Overall, knowing how to Zerk off snipers is something that is helpful to know, but far from needed. Explosive crossbows are a way to Zerk, but the slow fire rate means you can only do it on Anarchist. Additionally, these don't pick up ammo, so using it as a weapon and re-Zerking is limited. However, with the pistol crossbow for example, you can get some really easy and consistent Zerks that are super high. The disabled cousin to explosive crossbows is explosive bows. Bows are worse in every way, so don't use them. Yes, you can get Zerk, but, like, you suck at everything else. Seriously, don't. Berserker Live Matters is a mod, often shortened to the acronym BLM. It's a cheat that allows you to set your Berserker automatically, like a fucking scrub. People who use this mod are likely bad at the game, stupid, or both. You heard it here first, Carrot does not support BLM. Now go to Twitter and cancel me. There's plenty of other more unique and super niche map-specific Zerks, like turret gas, environmental fire, barrels, and more. However, those are so specific that I don't really want to rank them. Well, now that I mentioned cheating, let's do a list of those. Now, for me, cheats fall into 3 categories. Blatantly obvious mods that give you an advantage over those without it, mods that give an advantage, but not one big enough to really be considered cheating, and those that set off the idiot alarm. The idiot alarm category is less about getting an advantage over others, though you do get that as well, and more about pointing out that the users of this category are some of the most cognitively challenged, mentally dissonant, lobotomized, brain-rotted, Twitter-using, dim-witted, skillless, inbred, sister-fucking, dick-sucking, kitten-kicking. Well, you get the point. Pirate Perfection. This one has fallen out of popularity, but it's still painfully obvious when you come across it. It's your standard menu cheat with a variety of options to make the game easier for you, since you just can't handle it as it is. P3D hack, unlike Pirate Perfection, is still popular as ever. However, as far as I know, Pirate Perfection doesn't have the ability to crash other players' games, which P3D does. These guys are easy to spot with their aimbots, god modes, and Russian usernames. Ah yes, the free version of P3D. I can't even open CrimeNet without seeing these fuckers. That said, if you aren't even willing to pay for your cheats, but willing to have it branded into your name, more power to you. However, you should consider either uninstalling or asking your mom for her credit card to get the full version. Skin unlockers mark you as a cheater, but they're not really cheats. Some people just love in-game cosmetics so much that they get a cool little icon above their name, just to let others know how much they love those cosmetics. DLC unlockers are like skin unlockers, except they're literally illegal, since that's piracy. Yes, this game has a lot of DLC, but it's not like you can't enjoy the game without it. Even then, just wait for a sale. You can get all the content pretty cheap. Do you really want to commit cybercrime over 20 bucks? Like I mentioned earlier, BLM is a mod for the mentally crippled. They're lazy to Zerk, or too stupid to do so. Having a constantly high Berserker no matter what you do or what setup you have is an obnoxious advantage over others. If you ever see Stolen Hack on some players, it's just a modified version of BLM made by this Russian scrublord. He's only capable of using one meta-slave build with one weapon and one perk deck, and still needs his version of BLM to play the game. Ты чё, даун какой-то? Silent Assassin and all of its dumb fucking cousins are blatant cheats no matter what their retarded users say. It's balanced because I have 2 pagers. Yeah, and you'd have to be real fucking stupid to use pagers when you have SA. The popularity of Silent Assassin is not a sign that we've just failed as a community, but a sign that we failed as a society. Guys, it's balanced! I can make myself go slower when I carry multiple bags. You can also not. I remember seeing one player grab all 15 goats on Goat Sim at once, and then sprint to the trucks. CS users are lazy fucks who aren't capable of handling fundamental game mechanics. Helpers of any kind, be it Meth Helper, ECM Rush Helper, fucking Alesso Helper, really, are obvious signs of brain rot. I feel bad for anyone that needs these mods to play the game. The only good part is that I get to purposely mess up these players' games for the sake of my entertainment, despite their efforts to get help. Some people consider low violence mode to be a cheat, and it's sort of understandable why. Being able to automatically see which enemies are dead and which aren't is an advantage, but consider that some players need this mod to even play the game, as Payday 2 is unoptimized to hell, and each body eats at more and more of your frame rate. Even then, it's not huge that one player might waste a bullet or two shooting at an already dead cop. However, if you know your build's breakpoints, that won't happen anyway, as you know when cops will die. Better Bots is the last of our usual suspects, being SA, CS, and BB. Yes, this mod is a cheat, and you are a moron for using it. The bots are already strong as shit. What is the point of this mod? I may sound like a boomer, but back in my day, we only had 2 bots that couldn't be given boosts, different weapons, and had a myriad of abilities. The bots we have now tank a ton of damage while returning a fair amount, all the while buffing the player to obnoxious levels. If you are still trying to defend that bots are too weak in this game, consider taking a long walk off a short cliff. If you want to improve the pathfinding of the AI, just get Eider, as that buffs the cop AI as well, making it a fair trade. Some people combine better bots with keepers, and you might as well just play another game at that point. Having bots kill, dom, throw concussions, and even do objectives is just plain stupid. Info HUDs are a somewhat hotly debated topic, and yes, they do give an advantage to the user over those without it. However, boiling a player's skill to just the fact that they have a HUD is kind of cringe. You aren't taking an amazing player, taking away their HUD, and they're suddenly worse than you. Those that make this argument should just be less envious of those better than them, and spend time on actually improving their own skills. Another point of notice is that one of the few mods that Overkill ever approved, through their mod approval program back in like 1972, was Hawk's HUD. Yes, boomers rejoice. Please circle jerk about Hawk's HUD in the comments below, as it gives me audience interaction and makes YouTube recommend my videos more. Hawk's HUD had drill timers, counters, and health bars, which Overkill is fine with, so the info HUDs that are used nowadays are also fine by that standard. The Gab series of mods is truly a sight to behold. Sometimes you come across a player with literally all of them at once, and it just makes you wonder, why are you playing this game? There are others out there. Aside from the crime spree one, which is required to host high-level crime sprees beyond a certain point, these are all blatant and obvious. Any of those overpowered custom weapons and decks, don't even try that "but it's balanced" thing, because they're fucking not. I argued with someone on Reddit about this ages ago, and as an example of a balanced custom deck, they sent me this one. Go and read it for yourself, because I'm not gonna read it here for sure. Fucking Reddit. There's more than enough weapons and decks in this game, and I guarantee everyone using these mods hasn't even tried more than a third of the options. These brainlets just want the easy way out. In a similar vein to custom stuff, rebalances of weapons, decks, and skills exist. Except they aren't rebalances, they're just straight buffs. Just call them buffs. If you're using a Moffat as a buff, it's cheating. Okay, whatever. But don't get a rebalance and think you're playing fairly. These mods are made 99% of the time by idiots who don't actually know the game's balance, and make every stat better. Very few are actual rebalances, but I commend those that make them. Yikes. I really don't have any more to say. Some people will argue that crosshairs are a cheat, but in reality, we already have lasers in this game, so who cares? Besides, having a crosshair on your screen doesn't necessarily mean you're all of a sudden able to beat Shroud in an aiming duel. The mechanical skill is still a major part of that. There are a fuck ton of other minor mods that are cheats, but I can't be asked to go over them. The script is already 8 pages, and I haven't even gotten to the conclusion yet. Now, I also wanted to make clear that this is by no means endorsing these cheats and other mods. I'm only acknowledging their existence for the sake of education and entertainment. Don't sue me if you start cheating because of my videos. Well, there's my second installment of the terrible tier lists. I hope you enjoyed this awaited video, as I've been getting more and more requests to do a sequel. I've had this in the works for a while, but things just kept getting in the way. Hopefully the wait was worth it, even in the slightest. And if you want another one of these, then I'll just make you wait another month and a half.